Hello there, welcome back to our YouTube channel Science is Life. If you like our channel, subscribe and give us a thumbs up, and if you want to be notified when we add new videos, just hit the bell icon. So in today's lesson, we hope to discuss what are the loops that we can use in C programming, right? So we hope to discuss about for loop and while loop and later do while loop. So let's get started. So why do we use loops in a program? You may face a situation like this, that you are doing same operation for 5 times, right? You are doing same operation 5 times. So then what you are going to do? You write the code for 5 times, right? It is easy when you are doing it for 5 times, but assume that you need to do the same operation for 100 times. Then is it easy to do coding the same statement for 100 times? No, it is useless thing, because it takes time, and also it is very useless thing, right? So like a situation like this, then you can use a loop, right? Because you are doing the same operation for some number of times, right? So that is why we use loop. So your code will be shortened, right? As well, you can repeat the same thing again and again, right? Let's see how we can do this thing. First, let's discuss what are the for loops. This is the structure of a for loop, right? There we begin the statement by mentioning for, and we open the parentheses, right? So within the parentheses, we need, in the first part is the variable initialization. We need to have a variable to do this loop, right? So here you can declare a variable and initialize, or you can use a previous declared variable here also by initializing, right? You will see that later. So there must be the initialization, variable initialization. Then you need to mention a boolean expression, a condition here, right? Then in the third part, you need to update your variables. Here we have initialize our variable. Here we need to update this variable in as it change its value, right? So that is how we can continue this loop. You will realize later. So these are the major parts in for loop. The curly brackets, within the curly brackets we can do the operation that we are going to do, right? So we are separating these three parts by a colon, right? Keep in mind, it is not separating by comma, we are separating them by colon. So this is the flow chart of for loop, right? Let's see how this is working. We will start the for loop by the initialization, right? The for loop will execute from the initialization. Then after the initialization, the compiler will check the condition, whether the condition is true or false. If the condition is false, then the loop is not working, it will stop, right? If the condition is true, then it will jump into the body of loop, right? It will jump into the body of loop and execute it. Then you saw that there is an update part for the variable, right? Then it will update the variable, right? After the updating the variable, it will check the condition again. It will check the condition whether it is true or false. If it is false, the loop will stop, right? If it is true, it will again jump into the body of loop and execute the codes, then it will again update the variable. After updating variable, again it will check the condition. Likewise, this loop will continue until this condition getting false, right? Until this condition getting false, this loop will continue. That is how the for loop is working. Let's take an example for this and see how this is working. Here I have created a variable count, which is integer, right? Then I am using that variable within this for loop. So this is the initialization part, right? Here I have initialized the count variable as what? As 1, right? For at the very beginning, my count variable name is, my count variable value is 1. Then what will happen? After the initialization, it will check the condition, right? Then it check the condition. Now my count is 1, and is it less than or equal 10? It is less than 10, right? So the condition is true. Then what will happen? It will jump inside the for loop, body of for loop, right? Then it will execute this statement. It will print the value, right? Then what will happen? After executing the code, the variable will be updated, right? I told you. Then the variable will be updated. Then again it will check the condition, and if it is true, it will jump inside the body of the loop and execute the codes within the for loop. Then again it will update the variable. Again it will check the condition. If it is true, it will execute the code. Then again it will update the variable. Likewise, this loop will continue until this condition getting false, right? Until this variable getting false, this loop will continue. At the moment when the condition is true, let's assume our count variable's value is now 11, right? So is the condition true? 11 is it less than or equal 10? No. When the count value is 11, this condition is false. Then we can't go inside this for loop, right? So that means this for loop will continue until count becomes 10, right? That is how the for loop is executed. Let's take an example of for loop. Here I have created a variable count, which is integer data type, right? Because I am going to use this count variable within my for loop. That is why I created integer variable count, right? So first I need to initialize the count variable, right? Here I have initialized it into 1, and this is the condition. This is the example that I talk about in the previous slide, right? So let's run this code and see what will happen. Now you can see I told you that this for loop will continue until the count will become 10, right? So it is not printed 11, because if it is count is 11, then we can't go inside this for loop because the condition is false, right? So let's see, let's assign the count into 5 and let's update the code. Now you can see it will begin from the value 5, right? Here you can see it is started from 5 because I am initializing the count variable into 5. I am telling the compiler to start from 5, right? Then let's see if we change the value of this into 20. Then you can see it is started from 5. It executes until the count is equal to 20, right? So I told you here we can update our variable. Here I have used an increment. If you need, you can use a decrement also here, like this. I will do operators in a separate video. If you don't know what are the increment and decrement, you can learn later, right? Okay, if I need to do a decrement, then I need to start from a very high value, right? My count variable's first value should be a very high. Then I need to change the condition, checking whether it is less than or equal 10. And what will happen? It will start from 20, right? Then it will check whether it is check whether it is greater than 10. At the very beginning 20 is greater than 10. It is correct, right? Then it will jump into the loop and execute this code. Then my count variable will be decrement by a 1, right? Using decrement operator, it will reduce the value by 1 integer, right? Likewise, this will continue until my count reach value 10, right? Let's run this. Now you can see it has started from 20, then it has ended when it is 10. It has decrement 1 by 1, right? So if I change my variable update in another way, I told you that we can use increment or decrement here to update our variable. Or if I am going to so increment or decrement, increase or decrease by 1, right? So I need to increase this count by 3 or decrease by 3, then I need to do a separate thing, right? So in a case like this, then we need to do is we need to change our count, right? Then I mean like this, after executing the after checking the condition, it will execute this code. No, after executing this code, at the end of the code I need to update my count, right? I am going to update my count as I'm going to decrease by 2, right? Likewise, I am going to update. So my count's value will be changed here, right? Then I need to assign that value into here. After updating, I need to have the value of count here, right? So I am putting count here like this. Then let's run this code. Now you can see that it has begin from the 20, then it is decreasing by 2, right? Decreasing by 2 until I reach 10. Likewise, you can do update the variable increment or decrement, right? And also we can use nested for loops as well. Let's see an example of nested for loops. Here I have used a for loop within another for loop, right? So this for loop is within this for loop. So we can call as this is the outer for loop and this is the inner for loop, right? So how will these two loops will work? Here the outer loop, I am using two separate variables for these two loops. I am using integer I for the loop outer for loop, and I am using integer j for the inner for loop, right? I am going to start my outer loop from 1 up to 5, right? I need to execute all the things within this for loop for 5 times, right? Starting from 1 for up to 5, right? Then within this for loop I need to execute a loop for each value starting from 1 to 3, right? So how will this happen? Let's assume let's start from the beginning, right? So what is the value of I at the very beginning? My i's value is what? I's value is equal to 1, right? At the very beginning my I is equal to 1. Then what will do? It will check the condition. If it is less than or equal to 5. Is it less than 5? Yes. I is now 1. It is less than 5. So this condition is true. Then what will happen? Then we can jump into this for loop, right? We can execute all the things within this for loop, right? So we are going inside the for loop. Then we will meet another for loop, right? So this for loop is starting from 1, then there is a condition 2. So we need to check. So our j is now what? Our j is equal to 1, right? So we are checking whether the condition is true. 1 is less than 3, so the condition is true. So can we move into this for loop? Yes, we can jump into this for loop. Then we can execute this statement. Here what is we are going to do? We are going to print the multiplication of I and j. What is the multiplication of I and j? I is 1 and j is 1. So 1 multiplied by 1 is equal to 1, right? After executing this statement, we need to update our variable, right? Here we have an increment, so we are updating our j by adding 1, right? So what will be our j? Then it is 2. Now our j is 2, right? Then we are checking whether the condition is true. 2 is less than 3. So the condition is true. So what will happen? We can move inside this for loop again, right? Because the condition is true, so we can move inside this for loop. Then again we need to execute this printf function, right? So here what will be print? Again multiplication of I and j. So what is the value of I? Still I is 1, right? Still our I is 1 and our j is now 2. Then 1 multiplied by 2, it is 2, right? So after executing the stuff within this inner loop, what will happen? Again my variable will be updated, right? So again I will the program will increment my j by 1, right? So what is the value of my j? Then my j is 3. So it is checking the condition. Still 3 is equal 3. So the condition is true. So I can move inside this for loop again and I can print multiplication of ij. So now it is what? 1 multiplied by 3, it is 3, right? So what will happen after executing this statement? I need to increment my j again, right? So then what is my j's value? It is 4. Now my j's value is what? It is 4. J is equal to 4. Then let's check the condition. Is 4 less than 3 or equal 3? No, it is false, right? Our condition is false now. So can we move inside this for loop? No, we can't move inside this for loop. So we need to skip this for loop now, right? Then we need to execute other things outside of this for loop. That means this statement is outside of this for loop, but this statement is within this for loop, right? Still we are inside of the outer loop, right? Still we are inside of our outer loop. So then I need to print what? A new line. Then after printing 1 2 3 n, then I need to move into new line, right? That is what I am doing by printf /n, right? That means I am going to a new line. Then all the things are executed within the outer loop also, right? So we came to the end of the outer loop when the I is 1. Then what should we do? We need to go to increment our I, right? So let's increment our I. So what is the new value of my I? Then it is 2, right? Now my I is 2. So let's move inside the, so 2 is, so the condition is true because 2 is less than 5. The condition is true. Now I can jump inside of this for loop. Then I am meeting the inner loop, right? Here what is the value of j? It begins from 1, right? So again my j is what? My j is 1, right? Now again my j is 1. Then the condition is true. I can execute this statement. Now j is 2 and I is 2 and j is 1. What is the multiplication of this? It is it is 2, right? In the new line it will print 2, right? Again after executing this statement I need to increment my j. Then it should be what? It should be 2. Then again I should jump into this for loop and execute this printf. Then I is 2 and j is 2. Then what is the multiplication? It is 4, right? Likewise these two loops will continue, right? Now you can you can get an idea about nested loops, right? So do it yourself. Take a paper and pen and write down all the situations that we can have for both of these for loops. Then you will realize what is going on of these nested for loops, right? The next loop that we are going to talk about is while loop. So we can use while loops in C programming. So let's see how this while loop is working by using a flowchart, right? So in a while loop also we do use a condition, right? We because we are using all of these things to check the conditions, right? So we need to use a condition. That means we are using a Boolean expression which produce a Boolean value, right? So first when we reach a while loop, the compiler checks the condition whether it is true or false. If it is false, it doesn't jump inside of the while loop. It executes the codes after this while structure, right? It doesn't move inside of the while loop, right? If the condition is true, then the compiler will go inside of the while structure and executes all the codes within the while loop, right? Then after executing all the codes within the while loop, it again goes to the condition and check whether the condition is true, right? So here we are not in while loop. There is no variable update statement, right? But we can use within this loop to change our variable. After changing manually our variable, then we can when the compiler checks the condition is true, after the manual variable changing, then we can the compiler can check whether the condition is true or false, right? After checking whether the condition is true, If it is true, then again it will jump inside this while loop and execute all the codes within this while loop, right? After executing all the codes within while loop, if there is a variable update, then our condition will be changed, right? Then when the compiler checks whether the condition is true or false, if it is true, again that thing will this loop will continue until our condition become false, right? This loop will continue until our condition become false. That is how our while loop is working. Let's see this by using an example of code. Here I have created a integer variable. Its name is n, right? My variable name is n, which is integer data type, and I am assigning value as 1, right? So my integer n is initially 1. Then I am using a while loop, right? After executing all the codes before while structure, the compiler will reach to while, right? Then the compiler will reach while, then it checks the condition. Here I have put a condition with a variable and a constant. Here my condition is to check whether the n is less than or equal 10, right? So I told you at the very beginning my n's value is 1, right? So at the very beginning we are going to check whether 1 is less than or equal 10. So it is correct at the beginning, right? So if it is correct, we can move inside this while loop, right? Then we can execute each and every codes within this while loop. So here I am going to print the value of n, right? That is what I am going to do. So after printing the value, I need to increment the variable value by 1. I told you that we don't have a variable increment in while loop as for loop, right? It is it is not like for loop. In for loop we have a variable increment, but while it is only have condition only, right? So if we want to change the condition, then we need to change our variable manually, right? So I am going to increment my n by 1 here within the at the end of the while. After executing everything within while loop, I am going to change the value of my n. After changing this value, again the compiler will check the condition, right? Check the condition. So now what is my n's value? I have incremented by 1, then my n is 2, right? Still the condition is true. Then what will happen? Again it will execute all things within the while loop. At the end it will increment. Likewise, this loop will continue until the condition become false, right? So that is how a while loop is working. This is the example that I took before. So let's see what is the output of this code, right? So you can see that it has printed from 1 up to 10, right? Because I told you it will start when the n is equal 1, then after the n is equal 10, then the condition is true, then it will print n as 10. After printing n, the n will increment by 1, right? Then n will become 11. After becoming the n as 11, it will check the condition. Then is it correct? 11 is 11 less than 10? No, the condition is false. So can we move inside the while loop again? No. When the n is 11, we can't go inside the while loop. So it will not execute when n is 11, right? So that is why we are having numbers from 1 to 10, right? So that is how while loop is working. You can update this n into any you can update it. Let's update this while loop like this, then see what will happen. Now what is the n's value? At the very beginning n is 1, right? Then the condition is true, then n will be printed, so n is printed. Then after that I am adding 5 into 1, then what is the value of n? It is 6. Then the condition is true, then it will print n. Likewise the loop will continue, right? Finally I am going to talk about do while loop in C programming, right? So it is different from while loop. Let's see what are the differences between while loop and do while loop. Before that, let's see how the do while loop is working, right? When after executing all the codes before do while, the compiler will reach do while loop, right? When the compiler comes to do while, it will execute the things within do, right? It will execute everything within the do. Then after executing the thing within the do, it will check the condition, right? In while loop what happened? At the very beginning it is checking the condition, right? But in do while it is not checking the condition at the very beginning. It is executing the code within the do while, right? After executing the code, it will check whether the condition is true, right? If the condition is true, then again it will jump inside of this do while and execute the things within the do while, right? Then again it will, after the executing, it will check the condition whether it is true or false, right? Likewise the loop will continue, right? So the difference is that it will execute the code before checking the condition, right? If the condition is false, then it will not, after executing the do while and after checking the condition, if the condition is false, then again it will not jump inside the do while, right? So if the condition is false, but we are executing the thing but if the condition is false, before checking the condition is true, we are executing the codes within the do while, right? After executing the code, we are checking the condition whether it is false. If it is false, again we are not jumping inside this do while, right? So if the condition is false, there may be a single execution, right? There may be a single execution of codes within the do while. After executing these codes, it will terminate the loop, right? That is how do while loop is working. So let's see it using an example. Here I got the same example what I did with while. Here again I am creating an integer n and initialize it as 1. Then I am coding do while. So here you can see do, if the compiler comes to here, there is no condition to check when the when before we jump into the do, right? There is no condition before we are going to you can see that there is no condition with do, right? So no restrictions to jump inside this do because there are no condition checking, right? So it will execute the things within this do. So here I am going to print the number, right? After printing the number, what is the value of my number? It is 1. After printing the 1, I am updating the variable. I am going to add 1 into the n variable, right? So then after updating, my n is now 2. After updating, I am going to see the condition, right? After executing these things, I am going to see the condition. Then what is my n's value? It is 2. The condition is true, right? If the condition is true, I can move inside this do again, right? Then execute the thing, and again I will check the condition, and if the condition is true, again I will execute all of these things. Likewise, this loop will continue, right? So that is how it is working. So here I am taking the same example that I discussed before. Let's see what is the output of this code. Now you can see that it is printing from 1 to 10, right? So let's change this code. I'll change n into 5 and I'm going to increment it and check whether 5 is greater than 10, right? Now I am going to check. Now I am going to print everything, every value when the n is greater than 10. Now you can see that I am having output as 5 only, right? What is happening here? So at the very beginning my n's value is 5. Then I am telling there is no condition to check. Then I am going to I am jumping inside the do, and what is going to do? I am going to print the value of n, right? So my value is 5. Then after printing the value, my n is increment by 1. Now what is my n's value? Now my n's value is 6, right? Then it will check whether the condition is true. Is 6 greater than 10? No, the condition is false, right? So can I go inside this loop again? No, I can't go inside this loop because the condition is false. So this for loop, do while loop is terminated, right? That is why I am having 5 only. Now you can see the difference between while loop and do while loop. That's all for today's lesson. So I hope you learned how to use for loops, while loops and do while loops. Let's meet with another video. So thank you for watching. Stay safe.